I'm staring at my graduation invitation, torn perfectly in half. The gold embossing catches the light from my apartment window. Summa cum laude, it says on one piece. The other half, with my name, lies crumpled on my coffee table where my father threw it 20 minutes ago. "You want to embarrass this family?" he'd said, his voice that controlled kind of angry that always made my stomach drop. "Fine, but don't expect us to celebrate your mistakes." The invitation was for my graduation dinner, 4 years of engineering school, a 3.9 GPA, and a job offer from Tesla already in my pocket. But apparently none of that mattered, because I'd chosen my own path instead of the one he'd mapped out for me. I'm Sarah Chen, 22 years old. I work part-time as a research assistant while finishing my mechanical engineering degree here in Austin, Texas. My dad's a successful financial advisor who's spent my entire life reminding me that image is everything, that family reputation comes first, and that disappointing him has consequences. What I didn't know was just how far he'd go to prove that point. If you want to know what happened next, keep listening. To understand why a torn invitation felt like a declaration of war, you need to know about my family. My dad, Richard Chen, built his financial planning business from nothing. He's the guy who drives the newest BMW, belongs to the country club, and makes sure everyone knows his daughter goes to UT on a full academic scholarship. Or at least, he used to brag about that. My mom, Linda, is quieter. She teaches elementary school and has this way of smoothing over Dad's sharp edges with gentle redirects and strategic subject changes. My younger brother Kevin is the golden child, pre-med at Rice, following Dad's approved path to becoming a surgeon. Then there's me. I've always been the one who asked too many questions. Why did I have to major in business when I loved building things? Why couldn't I take that internship in California when Dad wanted me to work at his firm? Why did every conversation about my future feel like a negotiation where I never got to set the terms? The breaking point came 6 months ago when I turned down his offer to join Chen Financial Planning after graduation. I'd already accepted the Tesla position, but I hadn't told him yet. I was trying to find the right words, the right moment. "Sarah," he'd said over dinner at our usual spot, the expensive steakhouse where he takes important clients. "I've been thinking about succession planning. You could start as an associate, learn the business properly. In 10 years, you could take over everything I've built." My mom's eyes went wide. This was the first she'd heard of it too. "Dad, that's really generous." I'd started carefully. "But I've actually been exploring other options." The temperature at our table dropped 20 degrees. "Other options?" His voice got that edge. "Like what?" "I've been interviewing with some engineering firms. Tesla, actually, and Tesla." He set down his fork with the kind of precision that meant trouble. "You want to throw away everything I've worked for to go play with cars?" That's when I realized what this was really about. It wasn't about my career or my happiness. It was about his vision of the Chen family legacy, with me as a supporting character in his story. "I want to use my degree, Dad. I want to build things, solve problems." "You want to be ungrateful." He'd cut me off. "After everything I've invested in your education, in your future, you want to run off and chase some fantasy." My mom tried to intervene. "Richard, maybe we should..." "No." His voice was final. "Sarah needs to understand that choices have consequences. Family loyalty isn't optional." I should have seen the warning signs then. Should have noticed how his jaw tightened when I mentioned Tesla, how his eyes went cold when I talked about moving to California. But I was 22 and naive enough to think that parents ultimately want their kids to be happy. I was wrong. The graduation dinner was supposed to be a celebration. Mom had made reservations at Uchi, my favorite restaurant, for the Saturday after commencement. Extended family was flying in. My grandparents from San Francisco, my aunt and uncle from Dallas, even my cousin Emma, who I hadn't seen in 2 years. I'd been looking forward to it for months. Not just the dinner, but the moment when I could finally tell everyone about Tesla, about my plans, about the life I was building for myself. That was before Dad decided to cancel everything. It started with a text message on Tuesday morning. "Family dinner is off. We'll discuss this later." I called him immediately. "Dad, what's going on? Why is dinner canceled?" "Because you've made it clear that this family's support doesn't matter to you," he said. His voice had that controlled calm that was somehow worse than yelling. "So why should we pretend to celebrate?" "What are you talking about? This is my graduation. This is you choosing strangers over family. Again." I felt that familiar knot in my stomach, the one that always formed when Dad decided I'd disappointed him. "Tesla isn't strangers, Dad. It's my career. It's what I've been working toward. What you've been working toward is destroying everything I've built. Do you have any idea how this looks? My daughter turning down a position at my firm to go work for some Silicon Valley startup? Tesla isn't a startup. It's embarrassing, Sarah, and I won't have this family's reputation damaged because you want to chase some childish dream." The line went quiet for a moment. I could hear him breathing, could picture him in his office with that photo of our family on his desk, the one where we all look perfect and happy. "So, what are you saying?" I asked finally. "I'm saying that if you want to make adult decisions, you can deal with adult consequences. The dinner is canceled. I'll let everyone know that you're too busy with your new priorities to celebrate with family." That's when something clicked. This wasn't about the dinner. This was about control, about making sure I understood that defying him came with a price. "Dad, you can't just..." "I can, and I am. When you're ready to apologize and have a real conversation about your future, we can talk. Until then, consider this a preview of what choosing outsiders over family looks like." He hung up. I sat in my apartment, staring at my phone, trying to process what had just happened. My graduation dinner, the celebration I'd been planning for months, was gone. Not postponed, canceled. Because I'd chosen my own career path. But that wasn't even the worst part. Within hours, my phone started buzzing with confused messages from family members. "Grandma. Sweetheart, your father says dinner is canceled. Is everything okay?" "Aunt Lisa. Richard says you're too busy to celebrate graduation. That doesn't sound like you." "Cousin Emma. Hey, Dad says the family dinner is off because you're being difficult? What's going on?" Each message felt like a small knife. Dad wasn't just canceling dinner. He was controlling the narrative, making me the villain in a story where I was supposed to be grateful for his manipulation. I tried calling my mom, but it went straight to voicemail. When she finally called back that evening, her voice was strained. "Sarah, honey, your father is really upset. Mom, he canceled my graduation dinner because I took a job he doesn't like. That's not normal. He feels like you're rejecting everything he's worked for. You have to understand, this business is his legacy. And what about my legacy? What about what I want?" I could hear her sigh. "Maybe you could just talk to him. Explain that you're not trying to hurt him." "I shouldn't have to apologize for getting my dream job, Mom." "I know, sweetheart. But sometimes keeping peace in the family means... Means what? Giving up everything I want so Dad doesn't have to deal with disappointment?" The silence stretched between us. Finally, she said, "He's your father, Sarah. He loves you." "This isn't love, Mom. This is control." After we hung up, I sat in my apartment feeling completely alone. My own family was treating me like I'd committed some terrible crime by choosing my own path. Dad had turned my graduation, something I'd worked 4 years for, into a punishment. Then something didn't add up. I started thinking about the timing. Dad had been fine with my major for 4 years. He'd even bragged about my engineering scholarship to his golf buddies. So why was he suddenly so angry about me using that degree? I pulled out my laptop and started going through old emails, looking for clues. That's when I found the message from Tesla HR, dated 3 weeks ago, confirming my start date and salary. My salary that was higher than what Dad had offered me at his firm. I stared at the number on my screen, and suddenly, everything made sense. This wasn't about family loyalty or legacy, or any of the noble reasons Dad had given me. This was about his ego. His daughter was about to out-earn him straight out of college, and he couldn't handle it. But I still had no idea how far he was willing to go to stop me. The next morning, I got a call from my academic advisor, Dr. Martinez. "Sarah, I need to see you in my office. Can you come in this afternoon?" Her voice was serious in a way that made my stomach drop. "Is everything okay?" "Just come in. We need to talk." I spent the rest of the morning trying to figure out what could be wrong. My grades were solid, my thesis was approved, graduation was in 3 days. What could possibly need discussing? Dr. Martinez's office felt smaller than usual when I sat down across from her desk. She had a folder open in front of her, and her expression was carefully neutral. "Sarah, I received a call yesterday from your father." My blood went cold. "What kind of call?" "He expressed some concerns about your readiness for graduation. He suggested that perhaps you weren't as prepared for the professional world as your grades might indicate." I felt like I'd been slapped. "He said what?" "He mentioned that you've been making some questionable decisions lately, that you might benefit from taking some time to mature before entering the workforce." She paused, studying my face. "He also asked about your scholarship status." "My scholarship status?" "Whether there were any conditions that might affect your graduation or your standing with the university." I couldn't breathe. Dad had called my advisor to try to sabotage my graduation. He was trying to plant seeds of doubt about my competence, my readiness, my worthiness. "Dr. Martinez, I don't know what he told you, but Sarah." She held up a hand. "I've been your advisor for 2 years. I know exactly who you are and what you're capable of. Your father's call was unusual and, frankly, inappropriate." Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by rage. "He's trying to sabotage me because I won't work for his company." That's what I suspected. She leaned forward. "I want you to know that nothing he said will affect your graduation or your standing here. But I'm concerned about what else he might try." "What do you mean? Has he contacted Tesla, your future employer?" The thought hadn't even occurred to me, but now it hit like a freight train. If Dad was willing to call my university to undermine me, what would stop him from calling Tesla? I checked my phone. No missed calls from Tesla HR, no emails. But that didn't mean anything. Dad was smart enough to be subtle about sabotage. "I need to make some calls," I said, standing up. "Sarah." Dr. Martinez's voice stopped me at the door. "Document everything. If your father is trying to interfere with your career, you need to have records." I nodded and left her office, my hands shaking as I pulled out my phone. I had 3 days until graduation, and my own father was actively working against me. That's when I realized what this was really about. It wasn't just about control anymore. It was about making sure I failed so spectacularly that I'd have no choice but to come crawling back to him. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated me. That evening, I decided to go to my parents' house to confront Dad directly. I needed to understand what his endgame was, and I needed him to stop sabotaging my future. Mom answered the door, and her face immediately showed relief mixed with worry. "Sarah, honey, I'm so glad you're here. Your father's been..." "Where is he?" "In his office." "But maybe you should wait. Let him cool down." "No, Mom. We're doing this now." I walked through the house I'd grown up in, past family photos that suddenly felt like evidence of a lie. The perfect Chen family, where everyone smiled and no one questioned Dad's authority. His office door was closed, but I could hear him on a phone call. I knocked and walked in without waiting for permission. He was sitting behind his massive mahogany desk, the one that was supposed to intimidate clients into trusting him with their money. When he saw me, he held up one finger, the universal signal to wait while he finished his call. "Yes, I understand the policy," he was saying. "But as her father, I think I have a right to know if there are any concerns about her character or judgment that might affect her employment." My blood turned to ice. He was calling Tesla. "Dad." My voice was sharp enough that he looked up. "Hang up the phone." He covered the mouthpiece. "I'm handling some family business, Sarah. Wait outside. Hang up the phone now or I call the police." Something in my tone must have convinced him I was serious, because he ended the call with a quick, "I'll call back later." "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I asked. "I'm protecting this family's reputation and trying to save you from making the biggest mistake of your life. By sabotaging my job? By calling my advisor to plant doubts about my graduation?" He leaned back in his chair, and for the first time, I saw something that looked almost like satisfaction in his eyes. "I'm doing what any responsible parent would do when their child is about to destroy their future. This is my future, Dad. My choice. My life. Your life that I've paid for. Your education that I've funded. Your opportunities that exist because of the reputation I've built in this community." That's when he pulled out a folder from his desk drawer. Inside were financial documents, scholarship papers, and something that made my stomach drop. A contract I'd never seen before. "Do you know what this is, Sarah?" I looked at the papers, trying to make sense of the legal language. It looked like some kind of agreement, with my name on it and Dad's signature. "This is the scholarship agreement I signed on your behalf when you were 18. The Chen Family Education Fund scholarship that's been paying for your school." "What scholarship? I have academic scholarships, not a family fund. You have academic scholarships that cover tuition. This fund has been covering your living expenses, your books, your apartment rent. $40,000 over 4 years. I felt the room spinning. "What are you talking about?" "I established this fund specifically for your education, with very clear terms. One of which is that the recipient agrees to consider family business opportunities before accepting outside employment." He slid the contract across the desk. "You're in breach of contract, Sarah, and I can demand immediate repayment of the full amount." I stared at the papers, trying to process what he was saying. "You're saying you'll sue me for my education costs if I don't work for you?" "I'm saying that choices have consequences. You want to be independent? Fine. Pay back every penny I've invested in your independence." $40,000. Money I didn't have, couldn't possibly have as a new graduate. Money that would destroy my credit, my future, my ability to start my career. "This is insane, Dad. You can't." "I can, and I will. Unless you come to your senses and accept the position I've offered you." I looked at him sitting behind his desk, and suddenly I saw him clearly for the first time. Not as my father, not as someone who loved me, but as a man so desperate for control that he'd destroy his own daughter to get it. But that wasn't even the worst part. The next morning, I got a call that changed everything. "Miss Chen, this is Dean Morrison's office at UT. The dean would like to see you this morning if you're available." My heart sank. Dad had escalated to the dean. Whatever he'd told Dr. Martinez was just the beginning. "Of course," I said. "What time? Would 10 o'clock work? And Miss Chen? The dean asked me to mention that your father will be joining the meeting." I almost dropped the phone. Dad had arranged a meeting with the dean. He was going nuclear. I arrived at the administration building 15 minutes early, my stomach in knots. Dad's BMW was already in the parking lot, which meant he'd probably been there for a while, setting the stage for whatever performance he had planned. The dean's office was intimidating under normal circumstances. Dark wood paneling, diplomas covering every wall, The kind of space designed to remind you that important decisions were made here. Today, it felt like a courtroom. Dean Morrison was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and the kind of presence that commanded respect. Dad was already seated across from her desk, looking perfectly composed in his best suit. "Miss Chen," the dean said as I entered. "Please, have a seat." And I sat down next to Dad, who didn't look at me. His jaw was set in that way that meant he thought he was about to win something. "I asked you both here because I received some concerning information yesterday," Dean Morrison began. "Mr. Chen, would you like to explain your concerns?" Dad straightened up, slipping into his professional mode. "Dean Morrison, I appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. I'm concerned that my daughter isn't ready for the responsibilities of graduation and professional employment." "In what way?" "She's been making impulsive decisions, rejecting family guidance, and showing a pattern of poor judgment that I believe reflects poorly on the university's preparation of its students." I felt my face burning, but I forced myself to stay quiet. Let him hang himself with his own words. "I see," the dean said. "And what specific incidents are you referring to?" "She's accepted employment with a company that's inappropriate for someone with her background and education level. She's rejected a position at my firm, a respected financial planning business, to chase what I can only describe as a fantasy." Dean Morrison's eyebrows rose slightly. "A fantasy?" "Tesla," Dad said, like he was naming a strip club. "She wants to work for Tesla instead of joining a legitimate business." The silence in the room was deafening. I watched the dean's expression change from neutral interest to something that looked almost like amusement. "Mr. Chen," she said slowly, "are you aware that Tesla is one of the most innovative engineering companies in the world? That they're leading the revolution in sustainable transportation and energy?" Dad's confident expression flickered. "Well, yes, but..." "Are you also aware that your daughter graduated summa cum laude with a mechanical engineering degree, with a specialization in sustainable energy systems?" "Of course, but..." "And that she's been specifically recruited by Tesla's Advanced Engineering Division, which typically only hires candidates with exceptional qualifications?" I watched Dad's face as he realized his carefully planned ambush was falling apart. "Dean Morrison," he said, his voice getting that edge, "I think you're missing the point. This is about family loyalty, about..." "Mr. Chen." The dean's voice cut through his protest like a blade. "Let me be very clear about something. Your daughter is one of our most accomplished graduates. Her thesis on battery efficiency has already been cited in 3 peer-reviewed journals. Tesla didn't just offer her a job, they specifically requested her by name." The room went completely silent. I stared at the dean, not sure I'd heard correctly. "Requested her by name?" I managed to ask. Dean Morrison smiled for the first time since I'd entered the room. "Dr. Sarah Chen, Tesla's head of battery research, read your thesis, and specifically asked our department to connect her with you. She's been following your work for months." I felt like I'd been hit by lightning. Not only had Tesla not been influenced by Dad's sabotage attempts, they'd been actively pursuing me. Dad's face had gone completely white. That's not possible." "Mr. Chen," the dean said, her voice now carrying a note of steel, "I'm going to be frank with you. Your attempts to interfere with your daughter's career prospects are not only inappropriate, they're potentially actionable. Calling her advisor to plant doubts about her competence, contacting her future employer to question her character. These actions reflect poorly on you, not on her. I was trying to protect, you were trying to control. And in doing so, you've demonstrated exactly the kind of poor judgment you accused your daughter of having." Then something didn't add up. If Tesla had been pursuing me specifically, why hadn't they mentioned it? Why had Dad thought his sabotage attempts might work? "Dean Morrison," I said carefully, "when did Dr. Chen first contact the university about me?" 3 months ago. She's been waiting for you to graduate so she could make a formal offer." 3 months ago. Right around the time Dad had started getting weird about my career plans. Right around the time he'd started pushing the family business harder. Did anyone else know about Tesla's interest? I asked. The dean looked confused by the question. Well, yes. We sent a letter to your permanent address notifying you of Dr. Chen's interest and requesting permission to share your contact information. My permanent address. My parents' house. I turned to look at Dad, and the guilt written across his face told me everything I needed to know. He'd been intercepting my mail. After the meeting with Dean Morrison, I drove straight to my parents' house. Mom was at work, which meant I had a clear shot at Dad's office and whatever evidence he'd been hiding. I didn't knock this time. I walked straight into his office and started looking through his desk drawers. Sarah, what are you doing? Dad had followed me from the front door, his face still pale from the meeting with the dean. Looking for my mail, I said, pulling open the bottom drawer of his filing cabinet. The mail you've been stealing. I haven't been stealing anything. I've been protecting you from making a mistake. By hiding letters from Tesla, by intercepting official university correspondence. I found what I was looking for in a folder labeled Sarah College. Inside were 3 letters from UT's engineering department, all addressed to me at my parents' address. Letters about Tesla's interest, about Dr. Chen's research, about opportunities I'd never known existed. You've been hiding these for months, I said, holding up the letters. You knew Tesla wanted me specifically, and you hid it from me. Because I knew you'd make the wrong choice. I knew you'd choose them over family. This isn't about family, Dad. This is about you not being able to handle that I'm successful without your help. I kept digging through the folder and found something that made my blood run cold. Bank statements for the Chen Family Education Fund, the scholarship Dad had threatened me with. But these weren't statements for a legitimate scholarship fund. They were transfers from Dad's business account to my personal account, disguised as scholarship payments. Dad, I said slowly, this isn't a scholarship fund. This is just you paying my expenses and calling it something else. It's the same thing. No, it's not. A scholarship has legal terms and conditions. This is just you giving me money and pretending it comes with strings attached. I looked closer at the statements and noticed something else. The amounts didn't match what Dad had claimed. He'd said $40,000 over 4 years, but the statements showed less than half that. And you lied about the amount, I continued. This shows 18,000, not 40. Dad's face was getting redder by the minute. The exact amount doesn't matter. It does matter. Because you're threatening to sue me for money you never actually gave me under terms that don't actually exist. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures of everything. The intercepted letters, the fake scholarship statements, the bank transfers. Every piece of evidence that showed Dad's pattern of manipulation and control. What are you doing? Documenting everything, because I'm done letting you control my life with lies and threats. That's when I found the most damning piece of evidence yet. A draft email in Dad's handwriting, addressed to Tesla's HR department. I am writing to express concerns about my daughter Sarah Chen, who I understand has received an employment offer from your company. While Sarah is academically capable, she has shown concerning patterns of poor judgment and family disloyalty that I believe you should be aware of before finalizing any employment decisions. The email was dated yesterday. He'd been planning to send it after his meeting with the dean, probably assuming he'd have university support for his character assassination. You were going to send this, I said, showing him the draft. You were going to try to destroy my reputation with Tesla. I was trying to save you from yourself. You were trying to destroy me so I'd have no choice but to come back to you. I wish I could say that was the end of it. But Dad had one more card to play. Fine, Dad said, his voice taking on a tone I'd never heard before. Cold, calculating, dangerous. You want to play hardball? Let's play hardball. He walked over to his safe and pulled out another folder, this one much thicker than the others. Do you know what this is, Sarah? I looked at the documents he spread across his desk. They looked like financial records, but not the simple bank statements I'd been looking at. These were complex investment documents, trust papers, legal agreements. This is the Chen Family Trust, the real one, not some made-up scholarship fund, but the actual trust that's been funding your education, your apartment, your entire lifestyle for the past 4 years. My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? Your grandmother's inheritance, Sarah. When she died 5 years ago, she left a substantial trust fund specifically for your education and future. I've been the trustee, managing those funds on your behalf. I stared at the papers, trying to make sense of what he was saying. Grandma left me money? She left you everything. Her house, her investments, her savings. Nearly $500,000. All held in trust until you turned 25 or graduated college, whichever came first. The room was spinning. And you never told me? Because I knew you'd make stupid decisions with it. I knew you'd use it as an excuse to run off and chase fantasies instead of building something real. So, you've been stealing from me for 4 years? I've been protecting your inheritance and using it for its intended purpose, your education and your future. I looked at the trust documents more carefully. They were legitimate, signed by lawyers, notarized. And they clearly stated that the funds were to be released to me upon graduation. Dad, this money is legally mine. You can't just decide to keep it because you don't like my career choices. I can if you're not competent to manage it, and your recent decisions suggest that you're not. That's when I realized what he was really threatening. He wasn't just trying to control my career. He was trying to steal my inheritance by claiming I was incompetent to receive it. You can't do that, I said, but my voice sounded uncertain even to me. I can, and I will, unless you come to your senses and accept the position at my firm. Work for me for 5 years, prove that you can make responsible decisions, and then we'll talk about releasing your inheritance. 5 years. 5 years of being under his control, of having my life dictated by his whims, of proving myself worthy of money that was already legally mine. And if I don't? Then I'll petition the court to extend the trust indefinitely, based on your demonstrated poor judgment and family disloyalty. I'll argue that releasing the funds would be detrimental to your welfare and contrary to your grandmother's wishes. I felt like I was drowning. $500,000. Money that could pay off my student loans, buy a house, secure my future. Money that my grandmother had specifically left for me, now being used as leverage to control my entire life. But then something clicked. Something about the way Dad was presenting this, the desperation underneath his confident facade. Dad, I said slowly, if this trust is real, if the money is really there, why are you so desperate to keep me from taking the Tesla job? Because I'm trying to protect you. No, if the money is really there, my career choices wouldn't matter. I'd be financially secure regardless of what job I took. His face went very still. Unless the money isn't really there anymore. The silence stretched between us, and I watched Dad's carefully constructed facade finally crack. The money is there, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Show me the current balance. Sarah. Show me the current account balance, Dad. Right now. He looked at the papers on his desk, then back at me, and I saw something I'd never seen in his eyes before. Fear. That's when I realized what this was really about. You spent it, I said. You spent my inheritance. Dad's silence was all the confirmation I needed. That's why you're so desperate to control my career. That's why you can't let me be financially independent. Because if I don't need your support, I might start asking questions about my trust fund. It's not what you think. Then explain it to me. Explain where my grandmother's money went. Dad sat down heavily in his chair, suddenly looking older than his 55 years. I borrowed against it, he said finally. For the business. There were some investments that didn't pan out. some clients who defaulted on payments. I needed capital to keep the firm afloat. You stole my inheritance to cover your business losses. I was going to pay it back. The plan was always to pay it back before you graduated. But then the market turned, and some deals fell through. How much is left? He couldn't meet my eyes. About 60,000. 60,000 out of nearly $500,000. My grandmother's life savings, gone to cover Dad's bad business decisions. That's why you've been so controlling, I said, the pieces finally falling into place. That's why you can't let me succeed on my own. Because if I'm financially independent, I won't need you, and I might start asking uncomfortable questions. Sarah, I can fix this. If you work for me, I can pay back the trust over time. By using my labor to cover your theft, by making me complicit in stealing from myself. I pulled out my phone and started calling the number for the attorney whose name was on the trust documents. What are you doing? What I should have done years ago, getting legal representation. The attorney, Margaret Walsh, agreed to see me that afternoon. I gathered all the documents I'd found, the trust papers, the bank statements, the intercepted letters, everything, and drove straight to her office. Mrs. Walsh was a woman in her 70s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She listened to my story without interruption, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. Miss Chen, she said when I finished, what your father has done is called embezzlement. It's a felony. I don't want to send him to prison, I said quickly. I just want my money back and I want him to stop trying to control my life. Those are reasonable goals. Let me make some calls. Within 2 hours, Mrs. Walsh had contacted the bank that held the trust account, the State Bar Association, and the district attorney's office. Dad's access to the trust funds was immediately frozen, and an investigation was opened into his handling of the account. The next morning, I got a call from Dad. Sarah, we need to talk. Through lawyers, Dad. That's how we talk now. Please. I know I made mistakes, but we're family. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't sabotage each other's careers. Family doesn't threaten lawsuits to maintain control. I can make this right. I can pay back the money. With what? You just told me your business is failing. You don't have $400,000 lying around. The line went quiet for a long moment. What do you want? He asked finally. I want you to sign over the house. What? Grandma's house, the one that's part of the trust. Sign it over to me directly, and I'll consider not pursuing criminal charges. The house was worth about $300,000. It wouldn't fully restore my inheritance, but it would be a start. Sarah, that house has been in the family for 40 years. And now it's going to stay in the family, with me. 2 weeks later, Dad signed the papers transferring ownership of my grandmother's house to me. Mrs. Walsh also negotiated a payment plan for the remaining funds. Dad would pay me $2,000 a month until the trust was fully restored, with interest. It would take him nearly 20 years to pay back what he'd stolen, but it was better than nothing. I'm writing this from my grandmother's kitchen, 6 months after graduation. The house is beautiful, a 1920s craftsman with original hardwood floors and a garden that Grandma would have loved. I've been slowly renovating it on weekends, learning to use power tools and fix things myself. Tesla has been everything I hoped it would be. Dr. Sarah Chen, my namesake and now my mentor, has been incredible to work with. We're developing next-generation battery technology that could revolutionize electric vehicles. Every day, I get to solve problems that matter, build things that will make the world better. Dad and I don't talk much anymore. He sends the monthly payments on time, usually with a brief note asking how I'm doing. I respond politely but distantly. Maybe someday we'll rebuild our relationship, but it will have to be on equal terms, not with him holding financial leverage over my head. Mom comes by every few weeks. She's proud of what I've accomplished, though she still wishes Dad and I could work things out. I think she's starting to understand that some relationships can't be fixed with compromise and peacemaking. Kevin graduated from Rice last month and is starting medical school in the fall. He called me after his graduation dinner, the one Dad actually attended and celebrated, to apologize for not understanding what I'd been going through. "I always thought you were just being difficult," he said. "I didn't realize he was trying to control you. The hardest part has been accepting that the father I thought I had, the one who loved me unconditionally and wanted the best for me, never really existed. The real version was a man so threatened by my independence that he was willing to steal from me to maintain control. But here's what I've learned. You can't build a life on someone else's approval. You can't achieve happiness by making yourself smaller to fit into someone else's vision of who you should be. And you definitely can't trust someone who uses love as a weapon to get what they want. My grandmother used to tell me that the best revenge is a life well lived. She was right. Every day that I wake up in her house, go to a job I love, and make decisions based on my own values and goals, that's the ultimate victory over Dad's attempts to control me. The money he stole was just money. It can be replaced, earned back, rebuilt. But the years I might have wasted trying to please him, the dreams I might have given up to fit his vision of my future, those would have been gone forever. I'm Sarah Chen, 23 years old, mechanical engineer at Tesla, homeowner, and finally, completely free to build the life I want. And that's worth more than any inheritance. If you've been through something like this, if you have a parent or family member who uses money, guilt, or manipulation to control your choices, tell me in the comments. What would you have done in my situation? How do you set boundaries with people who refuse to respect them? Because sometimes the hardest part isn't standing up to the people who try to control you. It's accepting that they were never really on your side to begin with.